So welcome back, everybody. I am so excited today to bring on and welcome Anastasia Pagonis. So first of all, Anastasia and I have been going back and forth, trying to schedule this. So to me, I'm super excited because it also just shows that like when you're persistent and you believe in something, you keep working hard and you keep pushing, you keep kicking, and you keep, going and going and going, you will eventually end up with what you want. I'm so excited. I know this is going to be an awesome interview, but a little bit about Anastasia. So Anastasia is a three-time world champion, world record holder, American record holder, Paralympian in 2020. You won the gold and the bronze medal.
Yes.
And one of the things that I'm guessing you're the most proud of and the most excited to share and tell people about is your BFF, your guide dog Radar. So
Yes.
thanks for coming on and just taking
Thank you
time
so
to hang out and talk. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. This is amazing. I'm glad we were able to work everything out. And yeah, I'm really excited.
Well, one of the things I talk about with athletes is just this idea of really focusing on the process. And you may not get what you want initially, but if you keep pushing and you believe in it and you keep working it out, then eventually you are more likely to have that happen. And I think this was an interview that you and I sort of talked about and emailed back and forth about, and things got in the way and life got in the way. And I know you had an injury at some point, but we just kept kind of like being patient and working it and figuring it out. And I think so. This interview itself is a great example of that. Here's where I want to start. I wanted to kind of first learn a little bit about your initial exposure to swimming and what kind of drew you to the sport.
Yeah, definitely. I have a very confusing story with swimming. I was originally a soccer player, and then when I started to lose my vision, my doctor told me to try a less contact sport, and that's kind of how I got into swimming. And I loved it. It was my happy place. At the time, I only was missing my central vision. So I had pretty decent vision. It was technically 2400, so I could still read the eye chart. It was my face. I felt free and honestly fell in love with it right when I got in the pool. I was competitively swimming until I was 14. And then when I was 14, I lost more of my vision and then went through a pretty dark time and a depression. And then I decided that I remembered how much I loved the sport and I wanted to try it again. And honestly, getting back in the pool for the first time was really hard. I felt like I had to kind of learn how to swim all over again.
What was it like when you first got in the pool, right? Which was suggested because it was a non contact sport, and you said you fell in love with it. What was it about swimming that really like just kind of spoke to you or made you feel like, wow, this is somebody that I am falling in love with, or that you said it also made you feel free? Can you talk a little bit about what it was that kind of really
Yeah.
gave you
I
that
feel like
emotional response, if you will?
yeah, I feel like I've always had a strong relationship with the water. Growing up, my dad is, a big ocean person, surfer, that type of thing. So I always grew up kind of in the water. And then once I got in the pool, I felt like that was my freedom. I didn't need someone to guide me places. I didn't need a cane. I didn't need any of that. It was kind of just me in the pool, and I had that freedom.
You mentioned that you started to lose your vision. And I know around the age of 9 is when you kind of started to lose it. And then 14 was when you kind of progressively continued and lost it completely. And I think it's important to mention, for those people that haven't read your story, haven't looked you up, it's a condition called autoimmune retinopathy, right? Um,
Yes. Yes.
what I wanted to know is, how did the adults in your life, right? Your parents, your doctors, other people, how did they sort of communicate what was happening to you? Um,
Yeah. So I started losing my vision at around like the age 10. And then at 14, I ended up losing my usable vision, which was very hard for me, obviously. And it was a lot. I feel like the doctors that I had found at that time were so amazing. I go to Will Eye Institute in Pennsylvania, and they're amazing and truly like they're researchers, so they work on guinea pigs, and then once a week they'll work on a patient, which is me. Um, and they're so amazing and so supportive. And the doctor was honestly just as upset and confused as we were, which in a way was nice because I felt like there was some sort of compassion because some doctors do not have bedside manners. Um, and my parents, I have an amazing support system. They put me in an outpatient therapy, and I was getting honestly all of the help that I needed. And now, whatever it is, 6 years later, I am like best friends with my therapist. I love her to death. I was actually just out at her house on Monday hanging out with her. She's amazing. I feel like it's really important to have like a very good bond and relationship with like your therapist.
No, I love that. And I think, again, as a healthcare professional, as a medical doctor, a couple of the things you said really resonated with me. Was there anything that your doctors and your therapist said to you that was helpful and sort of helped validate how you were feeling, what you were experiencing, and also the fact that they were, going to kind of be there by your side and continue to support you through this?
Yeah, this is going to sound weird and maybe like controversial, but telling me that they don't understand, like the fact that like they don't get what I'm going through, which was something that for me was very good because I was always like, you don't get it. Like how can you relate to me? How can you help me? Because you don't understand it. And something that was really big for me was my therapist being like, I don't know what you're going through. Like, no idea what you're going through, but like, let's figure this out together. And that was something that was like very helpful for me at the time because I was frustrated. I was like, you don't know what's happening. Like, you don't know what I'm going through. And it was something that was really aggravating for me, but kind of saying that really helped.
This is such an important thing you just brought up. And I actually don't think it's controversial. It shouldn't be controversial, right? But sometimes we look at,
Yeah.
right, we look at somebody who's going through something difficult and we want to be helpful. And so we say something like, wow,
Yeah.
I know what you're going through, or it must be so hard, or I know exactly how you feel. And in the attempt to validate them, we oftentimes marginalize them because, like you just said, we don't know. And even if we're sort of experiencing the quote unquote same diagnosis or the same medical condition, we don't have the same life experiences. We don't have the same background, the same environment, all of those things. So to me, when a human being says something like, wow, I don't understand, or I'm upset, I'm confused, I think the point that you're bringing up, Anastasia, which is so important, is that you're making yourself a human being, right? Whether you're a physician or you're a therapist or you're an athlete, we're all people, and you make yourself a human being and you sort of validate the fact that, like, I'm also scared. I don't understand, because nobody at any age, but particularly at your age, should be going through something like that. And when you don't understand and they say, I don't understand, the ability to sort of then work together and work alongside of each other is much more, it just creates much more of an opportunity versus feeling, well, you're the doctor, I'm the patient, you're supposed to tell me what to do, right? I think that's such an important point.
Yeah, definitely. And also like saying that like it's okay. I'm sorry. It's my dog. And also saying that like Boomer. I'll get him. Boomer. Sorry. And also saying that it's okay, like not to be okay. Like the way that I was feeling, that was okay. Like that's not something that can be fixed in a snap of a finger. It's okay for me to be the way that I was feeling. I feel like that's super important instead of just finding a way of fixing it, almost like understanding like why I'm feeling this way and that it's okay to feel that way.
I love that. I love that. Now, was there anything that, when you think back over this experience, was there anything that people said in the attempt to be helpful that actually was not helpful or was actually even harmful or hurtful?
Well, a lot of things, but a specific thing was like I grew up in a very religious household and my family's still very religious. And growing up like in the church, I was always prayed to be fixed. And I felt like that was something that was very hurtful for me because I feel like I don't need to be fixed. And I'm okay just the way that I am. I actually have like a tattoo on my arm and it says perfectly imperfect because I am perfectly imperfect. And I feel like it's not something that needs to be fixed. Instead, you could like pray for a happy, successful life.
Anastasia, one of the things that I'm big on is language. and what we say and how we say it, right?
Yes.
And what I love about what you just said is when you're quote unquote prayed to be fixed, it implies that you're broken, right?
Yes.
Like we fix things that are broken, but as a human being, you're not broken, right? You're going through different
Um,
experiences. Some of them are going to be more favorable and some of them are going to have more hardship, right? But when you're sort
yeah.
of evolving and you're growing and you're going through these experiences, if we think about them as an evolution and as a growth, and again, some are going to be limitations, some are going to be considerations, some are going to be obstacles, some are going to be opportunities, right? How we choose to think about them is so incredibly important. And I
Yes.
think the idea of somebody to say, look, I don't know what's going on, but we'll work through it together is one approach, right? And it says that I'm alongside of you. We're going to navigate this together and it's going to be an evolution and it's going to be a process and it's going to be a journey. For somebody to say, oh, I pray that you're fixed. Again, I imagine the thought process and where it was coming from was a place of caring and love. But at the same
Yes.
time, when we think that way, then we imply that that person is broken. And I think this concept of perfection, right? I'm glad you brought that up because perfection is something that number one is unachievable, but it's also boring because if you were truly, truly perfect, there would be no room to grow and evolve. And so this idea of being perfectly imperfect, again, I think is a statement and a language of the fact that like, I love the fact that I am who I am and I have these flaws and that's what makes it so incredible, right?
Yeah, definitely. It makes me different. I always say it's boring to be normal.
Well, and normal, frankly, if we're talking about language, normal is broken because there is no such thing as normal, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
right.
100%.
So I think it's great. Now,
Yeah.
as you're sort of navigating this, right? As you're navigating this and you have the support of your doctor and your therapist and your family and people that are kind of doing what they can to understand your experiences and learn from you and communicate with you. You also talked about this experience with depression and you said you went through a depression. And I know that there were times where it got pretty dark. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with depression, but also sort of what were some of the factors that played a role in your recovery?
Yeah, so I went into like a very dark time. I thought that I was like a burden to everyone, and that if I was going to be here and I was going to be like this, then there was just no reason for me to be here. Um, and every day was really, really hard for me, but it's crazy looking back on it now. My parents forced me to take a 5-minute walk and to drink one smoothie a day, which for me seemed like it was the end of the world. And I would be screaming and cursing my parents out because at the time that felt like a marathon for me, you know? But they still forced me to take that 5-minute walk and to drink the whole smoothie. And I feel like those little things are really what made me get better. And looking back on it, it's kind of crazy, but at the time, it was a lot for me.
What was it about the 5 minute walk that number one felt like a marathon, but number two was also helpful and therapeutic for you? What did you get out of that?
Yeah, I mean, when you're in a really dark depression, you don't want to do anything besides kind of sit in your bed. Taking a shower feels like the biggest thing in the world. And I didn't have anything wrong with my eating. It was just the fact that I was in such a dark depression that I didn't have an appetite to eat. And that walk really it helped me, you know, like just being outside and feeling grounded is something that's so important. Um, it was just a lot at the time, you know, just having to get up and do things is really hard.
As you're taking this walk, right? And I imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong, cursing your parents, right? Feeling like, wow, I already feel this way. And now you're making me get up and move. But as you're doing it, as you're doing it, as you're doing it every day, every day, every day, what are you noticing is happening with just your thought process, but also kind of like your emotional state?
I felt like as the days went on, obviously I had some better days and some worse days. Um, it was becoming more enjoyable for me in a way. Not enjoyable because I hated doing it, but it was less of a force to make me go. And those 5-minute walks turned into, you know, going for a walk in the park and ended up like, starting small, like little things and making bigger moves. And then at some point I decided that I think I wanted to get back in the pool.
When you got back in the pool, right? When you got back in the pool,
Yes.
what was your initial kind of response, if you will?
It was very hard. The first time I jumped in the pool, I smashed my nose right into the lane line, and I had a huge bloody nose, and it was so bad. And then I started swimming, and I had no idea where I was, and I had a panic attack. And guess what? That was the end of that day. But I went back again the next day and tried it all over again.
What possessed you to go back the next day? Like what
The love,
motivated
the
you?
love, the love that I had for it before. You know, I knew that this was something that was possible for me to do. And with the support and the little, little pushes from my parents is something that really got me there.
First of all, thank you for telling me this story. What I love and appreciate about this story, and this is why I wanted to ask you about it, right? Is when we get really, really down, right? And in the way you're describing it, right? When you're describing, you're talking about feeling really down, feeling like a burden, not having an appetite, not getting out of bed, right? Like when we talk about depression, again, people I think oftentimes use that word somewhat casually, right? And
Yeah.
they feel like, oh, I have depression, I'm depressed. But depression is not just a mood state, right? It's a physical state, it's emotional state, it's a psychological state, it's a cognitive state. And so, like, one of the big things is it can affect your energy, it can affect your motivation, it can affect your appetite, and that sense of guilt, that sense of burden. It's not just feeling sad, right? And so, the way I appreciated you describing it is really an overall state of being that is affected, right?
It's definitely 100%. It affects all aspects, which is crazy that like feeling sad could cause you to not want to eat anything. You know what I mean? Like cause you to feel like that sort of way. It's crazy how your body is all connected and how everything works.
Well, and the other thing is, right, that sadness is just a part of the depression. The depression is a condition, right? It's a medical condition. Now, what I love about it, though, is that when we feel like we can't do anything, right? Sometimes just the smallest things start to make a difference. And this is also what I love about it is I talk to folks so many times about like when you're thinking really, really low or really, really down and you're feeling really, really low or really, really down, right? Your thoughts and your emotions are really getting in your way. Sometimes the only
Definitely.
thing you can do and the best thing you can do, right? Because our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions are all interconnected, right? They're all interconnected, right? So the way you think affects how you feel, which affects what you do, which affects how you think, and they're all interconnected, right? So when you do an action, what you did is you did an action. Every day you walked for 5 minutes. Every day you walked for
Yep.
5 minutes, right? That action starts to then change the way you think. And you're like, well, now I can go maybe a little bit longer. And maybe I can go to the park. Starts to change the way you feel. You start to feel more motivated. You start to feel more energetic, right? Sometimes the smallest action, and the reason I want to highlight this, I think, is for folks who are struggling with mental health issues or mental illness, is you don't have to do a big thing. You don't have to go back to where you are. But if you just get out of bed, if you just go for 5 minutes, I mean, you're talking 5 minutes, as
Literally
miserable as 5 minutes is.
5 minutes. I think I literally made them set a timer for 5 minutes because
They was screaming, cursing, spitting.
yeah,
It
my
was like a wild animal to get her out of the house.
that's my mom, everyone. Yeah, I literally was a wild animal to get me out of the house, and I made them set a 5 minute timer because yeah, it just felt like so much, but it really helped, and I'm so thankful for my parents for like literally physically forcing me to it.
But it's so, so important because number one, you still did it. You still did it. They set a timer. They dragged you out
Mhm.
kicking and screaming, but you still took the steps, number one. So I think it's also important to validate and understand that when we feel like we have nothing left to give, we are a lot stronger than we think. The other thing I love about it, though, the other thing that I love about it is your parents, right? It's very easy when somebody is struggling to want to take it easy on them because we feel bad for them. Your parents also made a decision and said, you know what, there's a lot of things you can't do, but you're going to walk for 5 minutes. Like, and we're going to force you. And even though you're kicking and screaming like a wild animal, like think about the effort it takes to get you to do 5 minutes, right? It was probably 30 minutes of effort and a lot of energy
probably
to walk for
more.
5 minutes. But guess what? 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then you say, I want to go back to the pool. The next thing I love about it is you go back to the pool and it's not what you envisioned before, because now you're hitting your head. You got a bloody nose. You're not free and casual and floating. You're getting beat up. But guess what? You showed up again. You showed up again. You showed up again. Can you talk about, as you're showing up every day, whether you like it or not, right? Whether you want to or not, whether you feel forced or not, as you're showing up every single day, what is starting to happen within your mind about your ability to continue to grow, continue to evolve? And again, like what's happening to your moods and stuff?
Yeah, I feel like getting your endorphins going is something that is so important. Even for my therapy, I actually used a yoga therapist, because just being able to like move and feel grounded and, you know, like have your body doing something, in my opinion, I feel like is so, so helpful. So getting back in the pool and being able to do that, once I was able to kind of not crash all the time and figure out, you know, my way of swimming, that was my happy place. That was my independence. That was my freedom. As much as I love Radar, that was where I didn't need him. That was where it was me in the pool. And sometimes crashing, but mostly me in the pool.
As you're in the pool and you're swimming and you're starting to kind of navigate that piece, can you talk a little bit about how your relationship with swimming started to evolve and sort of get more to this competitive level?
Yeah, I always loved, I am a super competitive person, like very, very competitive. My dad is super competitive too, so I definitely get that from him. But yeah, I've always loved competing, and honestly, my favorite part of swimming is competing. The fact that I get to compete against people who are just like me and have the same disability and the same level as me is amazing, because I feel like I belong there. I swam able-bodied at a college for a very long time, and it was really hard for me. I had to do everything in my power to keep up and, you know, stay with it, and it was really, really hard.
As you're now competing, right, and you're winning medals, like you're not just competing, like you are competing, right? Like you're at this high level. What do you notice? You said something interesting. You said once you started doing this and you started kind of competing at this level and within this context, you said, I feel like I belong there, right? So as you're now
Yeah.
competing and winning medals, right, and going to the Paralympics and stuff, can you talk about that confidence and that sense of belonging and sort of how that's evolved?
Yeah, I feel like it was always really hard for me because I grew up swimming on a able-bodied team. I swam a little bit of college on an able-bodied team as well, and it was really, really hard for me. So once I finally got involved in the Paralympics and I was racing and competing against people who had the same disability as me, it was something that made me feel like I belonged there. I didn't feel like I was just always getting my ass kicked. Although, to give myself a little credit, I did keep up with the able-bodied people.
But as you're winning, right? So can you sort of talk about this ability and this sense of belonging, not just in the pool and not just against the other swimmers, but now, again, just in society, right? In the world, like how has that translated over?
I feel like the world isn't accessible for people with disabilities. Nothing is set up for us. If I want to go to the supermarket, I have a long process before going to the supermarket, right? I have to get my guide dog, I have to get my cane, I have to call an Uber, I have to find my way into the supermarket, I have to ask someone for help at the supermarket. And it's just not the way that it would be for an able-bodied person, which is okay because I've learned to accept that now. But it was really hard for me in the beginning, just feeling not normal, but now I know that like normal's boring and I'm really cool the way I am.
You've also, another thing that you've done is you've taken this platform, right? You just said like, I've accepted it, right? But not only are you accepting it, you're embracing it, and you're taking this experience that you've had, that you have on a regular basis, this platform that you have, and now you're sort of going to social media, right? And you're using your personality, you're using your humor, you're using your wit, you're using your charm. And what you're doing is you're highlighting how the world is not set up for people with disabilities, how the world can be very
Yeah.
insensitive, how people
Yeah.
can say things that are often very thoughtless, right? Without intention, without understanding sort of the impact of what they say. So,
Mhm.
what I wanted to ask is, what's some of or one of the most absurd questions that you've received, and how have you responded to it?
Oh my goodness. I can't even put like my finger on one, but a few of the specific ones are like, I mean, this is crazy, but like, how do I feed myself? How do I dress myself? And it's like, wow, that's what the world thinks of. And for me, I'm trying to change the way that people see the blind and visually impaired and kind of break down the stereotypes that people have.
How do you respond to those questions? Like when somebody says something like that, what
I
do you
bring out
say?
I bring out my dark humor. I have a I cope differently than other people, and I understand that, and I'm not trying to offend anyone. But I like to bring my trauma to comedy. So when people say something like that, I'll respond with, me being really stupid and like trying to find the food on my plate and then like slapping it on my forehead or like putting it into my hand, like showing people like this is how stupid you sound when you ask a question like that,
So
and kind of putting it in perspective for them. And then after that, I'll actually explain kind of how I do eat, because for me, it doesn't seem like it's a complicated situation, but people don't really understand. Get boomer.
when you take that approach, right, rather than sort of getting overly offended or obviously offended and saying, what kind of stupid question is that? What do you mean? How do I feed myself? But you take this approach where you sort of use your humor, you show them how absurd of a question is. You don't just tell them, you show them, right? You
Yeah.
talk about that dark humor. But
Yeah.
then you go and you actually, and what I love about that, and why I think that's actually really cool that what you do is it's not just you using your dark humor and doing it. What you're also doing is
Educating.
you're educating, but you're disarming their discomfort, right? When people make comments like that, oftentimes they're
That's
so
that's something that's
uncomfortable.
very important. Yes. I love making people feel comfortable with people like with disabilities. Like the other day I was at an event and some guy was trying to read something off of his phone. He was like, "I'm so blind." And he like stopped himself mid thing and he was like, "Oh, I am like so sorry." And I'm like, "Man, you really should get checked out. You might be getting something like me. Like hopefully I'm not too contagious." And like kind of making them feel comfortable with what they said, cuz like it's okay. I personally don't mind it, although I know some people may, but for me, I'm okay joking back with you. I don't want to be contagious. Ooh.
Well, it's awesome. I mean, it's awesome because I think again, when people make comments like that, they're often
Hello?
uncomfortable.
Hello?
I'm here.
Mom, Sean, someone, he's glitched. Oh
I'm
no.
I'm here. I'm here. I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
I think it's because you left the room because it's on your phone. Or is it
It's on her phone.
Is it?
Yeah. It's okay. Are you good?
Can I hear you?
Can you? Yeah.
Nope,
can-
can't hear.
I can hear you fine. I can hear you fine.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay. It keeps glitching in and out. I heard like kind of trickles and then I didn't. Okay, sorry.
So she goes a lot by sound. So if she hears like a big pause,
Yeah.
she's gonna go off.
Sorry.
Not
She
a
can't,
problem. Not a problem.
Okay.
I can hear you fine. And I'll repeat the thing. What I love about what you're doing here is when people are uncomfortable, right? When
Yeah.
people are uncomfortable, they often say insensitive things. And again, we go back to like people in your church praying for you to be fixed, right? Often it comes from a place of insecurity. It comes from a place of discomfort. What I love that you're doing though is when somebody makes a comment like that, that's insensitive or absurd, for lack of a better word, and if you come at them directly, then oftentimes they become defensive because now you've highlighted directly how insensitive they have been, and then it becomes confrontational. What
I
you're
like to make them think. I like to make them see how ignorant they are. If that makes sense.
and I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant.
Perspective.
100%, because what you're doing is, instead of saying what you said is ignorant or that's so ignorant, you're showing them through your humor. They can't help but laugh. And if they can't laugh at it, they can see that what they just said or what they did is really, it's comical, right? It's comical. And so then people tend to sort of like loosen up a little bit, and then they're going to be more available to listen. They're going to be more available to be educated, right? And so in that moment, you're actually taking humor and you're lowering their anxiety, lowering their level of discomfort. Then their actually ability to process language and listen opens up. And now you're coming in with the educational piece, right? And even in those moments where somebody kind of fumbles and says something, for you to be like, oh, I hope I'm not contagious. Again, it kind of helps them realize, wow, that really was a stupid comment, but like, we can move past it. And you know that I didn't mean it, but you're joking, and now you made me feel stupid. And like, we can all move on. So to me, it's actually, what I love about it is, again, one of the skills that you show that you're having is that no matter what your quote unquote identified limitation is, your grit, your determination, your ability to keep showing up, and your humor, these are all assets that you're investing more in, right? And so ultimately they become stronger and stronger. I talk a lot, Anastasia, about things that are out of our control, and how when we focus on those things and we try to kind of navigate those things, we get more anxious, we get more overwhelmed, we get more depressed. And the importance of controlling the controllables, right? I actually recently did a TED talk on it back in April, titled Control the Controllables. And I say how the three things we can always control are effort, attitude, and gratitude. No matter what, we can always control our effort, always control our attitude, always control our gratitude. Can you
100%.
talk about sort of how you integrate these concepts into your daily life and into your daily routine?
Yeah, so right now I'm recovering from a major shoulder surgery, and Paris is in exactly 365 days. So, as you can imagine, I'm freaking out over here, but I'm trying to stay grounded and focus on the things that I can control. And what I can control is going to physical therapy every day and doing the best that I can do at physical therapy every single day. And being appreciative of my family for taking me there, and for my physical therapist for doing all that he can do. And, like, trying to keep a positive outlook, which can be frustrating at some point, but I try my best, and honestly, just try and stay in the moment and not really look to the fact that, oh, I have to be competing at the highest level in a year.
When you find yourself freaking out, is there anything that you're able to do to keep yourself in the moment and keep yourself grounded and keep yourself sort of appreciative, if you will?
So this is very random, but I distract myself. Yesterday, I was kind of having a mental breakdown, and we went to the farmer's market, and I got just a bunch of corn, and I sat outside and I was just peeling the corn and thinking about, oh, I'm peeling corn. Like, there's nothing else to think about right now because I have to focus on how I'm peeling the corn. And I guess kind of stupid things like that in a way. Just things that can like distract me and make me feel grounded.
Well, I don't think it's stupid at all. I mean, you're talking about things that like people take for granted, like peeling corn, going for a 5-minute walk. But these are small things that can make a big difference. And you've highlighted a couple examples now where, when you do something small, an action, something that you're capable of, that we're all capable of, right? Like, if we have corn, most of us are capable of peeling it, right? But we don't realize that by focusing on each husk that you peel off, you're distracting yourself, you're investing in that. And now your thought goes to that instead of all the things that are overwhelming you. When you're feeling really down and overwhelmed, just doing a small 5-minute walk, right, starts to kind of focus on one step in front of the other, distracts you from some of the other things, releases endorphins, releases different neurochemicals. All of these things, as quote unquote stupid as they sound, are not stupid at all. They're things that we can all do to be able to put ourself or our mindset in a place that's actually promoting our well-being and moving forward versus freaking out and getting anxious and stuck.
Yeah, definitely.
Here's my last question for you. And you had mentioned this earlier. Your motto is changing how we see the visually impaired.
Yes.
As you're posting things on social media, you're using your humor, you're using your experiences. What's the response that you've received from other people in terms of helping them change the narrative?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are ignorant to it, and that's why I am kind of doing what I am doing. I want to, change the way people see it and change the perspective that Hollywood gave blindness, where you have to look a certain way, act a certain way, and be a certain way. And they think that if you don't fit in that box, that, oh, well, like you must be faking it. This must not be real. Like you must not actually have a problem. And that's just not true. And that's why I'm trying to break down that stereotype.
And if people, like other people, what's the response that they're giving you? Like people that you're impacting, people that are messaging you, what are people saying? What is it doing for them?
I get like that I'm inspiring them, which I feel like is here, like, I don't know, that's why I'm here. If I could help one person and make one person feel better or give one person hope in some way, I feel like it's all worth it. So
as you're hearing that you're inspiring other people, as you're hearing that you're helping other people, as you're hearing that you're educating other people, right?
Yeah.
What's the impact on you? What do you get out of it?
It makes me feel happy. It makes me feel like I'm doing all of this for a reason.
So not only are you not broken, you're actually continuing to grow and evolve and helping other people, quote unquote, fix themselves.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
What advice do you have with anybody else that has kind of a perceived limitation and is sort of either starting to go through, right, something medical, or starting to go through a limitation, or has a limitation and is sort of really focusing on the things that they can't do? What advice do you have for them?
I would say that don't give up. There is hope, and that this sounds cliche, but that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and things might be hard right now, but it does get better.
Listen, not only is it somewhat cliche, but I also think it highlights your dark humor. That here you are, somebody that's visually impaired, saying that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Anastasia, is there anything else that you want to say or anything else that you want to share?
I don't think so. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this, and I appreciate you having me and for your time. So thank you.
Absolutely. Where can people learn about you? Where can people follow you? And where can people get educated?
My ats are at Anastasia_K_P on all platforms.
I have one more question, actually. I just thought of this. When people ask your parents, like, how's she doing all this? Like, what's she doing? What's the response that they give?
She's great. I feel like that's what parents always say. Oh, she's great. Oh, she's great. Yeah, I don't know.
So
I feel like they always, yeah, I feel like I'm a very happy person.
They see you as their daughter. They see you as your kid, right? They don't say, oh, she's overcome this, she's overcome that. They say she's great because you are great. Like whether you can see or you can't see, you're doing great things. You're inspiring people. And what your parents did a long time ago is they said, no, get up. You're going on a 5-minute walk because that's what people who are great do. Nope, you're drinking a smoothie because that's what people do.
Yeah.
They drag you kicking and screaming because parents take their kids, drag them kicking and screaming to do things that are good for them that they don't want to do, but they know it's good for them. And ultimately, what your parents are also doing is they're just saying, look, she's great because she's our daughter. And it's not about what you've overcome. It's not about all these other things. It's just, yeah, of course she's great. She's our daughter. Like, it's just a very simple question. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. It doesn't surprise me, but I wanted to highlight that because I think it's important for parents that are listening to this, right? When you have a loved one that's going through something difficult, treat them like they're great because they are.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Listen, this has been an incredible conversation. I hope that other people enjoyed this as much as I did. I would encourage everybody to go check out Anastasia on social media. It's really, really inspiring, educational, and it's funny. It is. You do a really, really good job. If you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, Please help me grow this show together. Consider leaving me a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. If you don't have access, email me your thoughts, mindsettraininginstitute@gmail.com. If you want to learn more about me and my work, mindsettraininginstitute.com. I'm also on Instagram at Dr.T_sportspsych, SPORTS, I'm not going to have videos of me swimming because I will also be crashing into the walls and beating myself up. It's definitely not my sport. But I really want to thank you, Anastasia. I want to thank everybody who supports this show, including the hidden opponent. And remember, think great, feel great, be great. Mindset is everything.